Well, Easter Sunday, it doesn't get much bigger or better than this. I mean, this is the high holy day of the Christian faith and the Christian church. It is the most significant day on the whole Christian calendar. Easter is so significant, in fact, that every other Sunday of the year is actually considered to be a little Easter. That no matter what we might do, no matter what songs we may sing, no matter what scriptures we read, no matter what sermon is preached, that always the resurrection of Jesus be front and center to us always when we gather together as God's people. It is a day that we gather together to celebrate. There will be more people in the church today than any other day of the year, far and wide. There's special music that will be sung. There's special activities that are planned. Pastors are trying to give their best sermon out there. They've stressed, trust me, they've stressed for weeks about what they were going to preach on Easter Sunday. I was reading last night, a friend of mine who is a staff person of another church in another part of the state was writing about how Easter Sunday is Super Bowl Sunday for pastors. This is it for them. And they're doing their best and hopefully to give one of the best sermons they can throughout the year. It is a great day. It is a great day to gather and to celebrate. And that's what it is. It is a celebration this morning. But as we come to celebrate and proclaim the good news of the empty tomb, I ask a question. Does any of this celebrating, any of these songs and effort and work, does any of this make a difference tomorrow? Does any of this have any implications? Does the resurrection of Jesus Christ have any implications for what happens beyond today? What happens when we go back to our jobs this week, we go back to our lives? Is there something about today that stays with us? Or does the empty tomb become an empty message? That's what I want to talk about our time together. But as we gather, I want to share with you the Easter story. Today I want to share with you how it's found in Matthew's Gospel. Hear this great and wonderful story. After the Sabbath, as the first day of the week was dawned, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. And suddenly there was a great earthquake. For an angel of the Lord descending from heaven came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, his clothing white as snow. For fear of him the guards shook and became like dead men. But the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid. I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he has been raised from the dead. Come, see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples he has been raised from the dead. And indeed, he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him." This is my message for you. So they left the tomb quickly with fear and great joy and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them and said, "Greetings." And they came to him, took hold of his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see." May God bless the reading, the hearing, our understanding of his word. Just take a moment to pray for and with me. Gracious and loving God, may the words of my mouth and meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, our God, my strength and my redeemer. This I pray in the name of Christ Jesus. Amen. Well, Easter Sunday, like most other holidays, there are just certain things we've come to associate with it. Whenever we think about Easter, there's certain things that come to mind for all of us as we gather and we celebrate. I know that's sort of been the case for me from the time when I was growing up. There's things I still remember about the way we would celebrate Easter, a way that I imagine thousands and thousands of others, many of you would have celebrated and had the same kind of things. There were a few things that I really looked forward to growing up on Easter. There were a couple things, to be honest, I didn't look forward to. One of those that I always looked forward to, and you can't get much more Easter than this, is Easter baskets, right? We think about Easter, we think about the Easter basket. And every year we get up, and I remember our baskets, they were always really simple. We usually have a big chocolate bunny that would be in there, and some other candy, and then the plastic eggs. And the eggs always have what I call the surprise candy, right? You had to open to see what was in there. Although most of the time, for me when I was growing up, those eggs were filled with jelly beans. It's a good thing, because I really like jelly beans. Except for those black ones. Those black ones are just kind of nasty. My dad liked the black ones, and so I was like, here you go, there's your Easter candy. Get a little bit good at that, share it with him. And of course, we usually have a small gift, like a game, something like that would be a part of our baskets. And every year we look forward to that, what kind of candy there, get those treats, and what we get to have. Just Easter baskets are a part of Easter. Another thing that was always a part of Easter that I look forward to was coloring Easter eggs and Easter egg hunts. That was always a lot of fun. I remember our backyard Easter egg hunts, and we would hide the Easter eggs, and we'd have the plastic Easter eggs. It would sometimes have candy, sometimes it'd have like a nickel or a dime or a quarter, and if things really got crazy, we'd have a dollar bill. How exciting it was. I remember finding the egg that had a dollar bill in it, just being so ecstatic. And of course, we'd also have the real eggs. I remember coloring Easter eggs. It's such a big part of the tradition. Still to this day, though, I will tell you, if I open a bottle of vinegar, I think about coloring Easter eggs. Just the smell of it, right? I mean, I know many of you like, today you can color without the vinegar, but that was always a part of it. And it never turned out the way it looked like in the commercials or the boxes there. But hey, it was nice to have all the different colors and have fun and mix and match. And mine was always some weird colors. I blended a lot of the different dyes there. But we always looked forward to that. And we would sometimes actually hide the real eggs too. Although I got to tell you, if you hide the real eggs, a word of wisdom. Remember where you hid them. Because you did not want to find those later on. And I say this from experience. We had that happen one year. We were hiding eggs and put some of the real eggs out. We found all of them but one. There was one real egg that had not been found. And I tell you, we didn't find that egg until we moved. That is not a pleasant discovery you want to make on that one there, but just make sure you kind of make those. You're going to hide them good. But we always had a lot of fun, and we looked forward to it. In fact, once we discovered all the eggs, we usually hide them again, and just to have fun of trying to get them to hide them for each other. But always looked forward to it. Those are things that I know and I know many others would look forward to every single Easter. I did say, though, there was a couple of things really didn't look forward to. One of those Easter things that I wasn't excited about, new clothes. Every Easter meant we got new clothes, only they weren't exactly the kind of clothes that I wanted. No. That was great for my sister. My sister loved it because she would get the pretty Easter dress, right? And she'd put on her Easter dress and then she would twirl around, right? The dress would fly up, and just had lots of fun with her Easter dress. My brother and I would have these outfits on that, trust me, they weren't anything as stylish as that. Our clothes were just usually corduroy pants. Oh man, and they were just cumbersome and they were uncomfortable. And we would stand there. My mom would go, "Let me look at you." I'm like, "Why do we have to do this? I don't want to wear these things. I want to put my shorts on." And she said, "No, you have to. We have to wear the new clothes." And why? Because of something else that always was a part of Easter that, I'm being honest here, I didn't exactly look forward to. Church. We had to wear our new clothes because we were going to church. We had to go to church every Easter. We moved around when I was growing up quite a bit, and sometimes we didn't have a church home, and we could go all year long and not go to church one Sunday, but I bet you come Easter Sunday, we were in church no matter what. And I was uncomfortable in church. Because I'm wearing those awful clothes, and we would come to church, and I have to sit there in the pew next to my mother. I was paying no attention to what was going on up front there. All I could think about is, I want to go eat my candy, and I want to find more eggs, and can't this be over already? I look at the preacher and say, "Would you be quiet, please?" Right? I just want to get over. I'm being full confession. I didn't look forward to it. So for those of you who are thinking that right now, I understand. It's okay. But then once church would get over, we would head out and get together with family, big family gatherings, have all the big food, big meals everywhere. And that was always kind of a mixed thing for us when we get together with family. I mean, on the one hand, it was okay to see some cousins, that might be our age. Maybe we'd play a little bit with them. But then there's always those relatives that, we'd rather not be around, Yes, it's once or twice a year. We have to put up with one another, but that's the reason we go back to our homes, right? Just keep it the way it is. And that was always a part, That was Easter for us growing up. It didn't really change much once I got older and had my own kids. It's the same for many other people. These are just Easter things. Easter baskets of candy, coloring eggs, hunting eggs, new clothes, gathering family, and church. It doesn't get much more Easter than coming to church. As I said earlier, there are more people in churches today than any other day of the year. And I can tell you, still to this day, I've got family, I've got people I know that you will rarely ever see in the church. They rarely ever will come to a church, but they will be in church on Easter Sunday. Why? Because that's what you do. I've asked them the question, so why are you going today when you never go any other time? It's Easter. You're supposed to go to church on Easter. That's what you do. And I go, well, I guess, if you're only going to go to church one day, Easter's probably a pretty good day to be there. Right? I mean, think about it. You get to come on the day when there's all that special music. And it's so joy-filled with all the special activities. And the pastor's giving his best sermon or her sermon. Well, hopefully they're giving the best sermon. They're trying. Just cut them a little grace that they've tried. And they're trying to do all this. It's a great day to be here. It's a celebration. It is the day we get to hear that one message. And if you can only hear one message, the message of the empty tomb is the one we need to hear. Because that is what drives us as Christians. That is the foundation of our faith. That story such as we heard today. We heard the version from Matthew's Gospel that takes us back over 2,000 years to that one morning. Early in the morning, it tells us, the women were headed to the tomb. Oh, they weren't going to the tomb with great celebration on their mind. They were going expecting to find a body. They were taking with them spices. They were going to anoint Jesus' body. It's not something they've been able to do because of some of the customs of that time, the timing of all of it there. They've not been able to prepare Jesus' body properly. So the morning of the third day, they made their way to the tomb, ready to do that with heavy hearts. But imagine how they felt when they saw the stone roll away from the tomb. They came and found that Jesus wasn't there. And then there's the appearance of the angel who comes and says, Jesus isn't here. He's been raised just as he told you. He is alive. And imagine how they would have felt. So confused, so troubled, fearing. But yet great joy. It tells us that in Matthew's story. They ran off with fear and great joy. Of course, we have the great joy. We know the story. We know what it all means. And that's why we are here. We're here to celebrate. This is a day to celebrate because Jesus is alive. He has been raised just as he told us, and his new life means new life for us. But as we celebrate today, there in the back is that question. Does any of this matter tomorrow? Does any of this story about an empty tomb matter to us tomorrow? And the next day? And next week? And next month? Is there any implications of the resurrection for the way that we go about our lives beyond today? I mean, we know it's a great story. It's a story that's supposed to give us joy and hope as we think about this new life, that one day, when this life comes to an end, Jesus has made possible something beyond this life. But I don't know about you. I'm not planning on getting there just yet. I'm still thinking there's going to be more days ahead of me. So what does the resurrection mean for those days? What does the resurrection mean now? You know, for the Apostle Paul, there was nothing more central than the resurrection of Jesus Christ. When he wrote his letters, when he preached his sermons, he didn't spend time talking about the miracles of Jesus. I mean, it was great that Jesus turned water into wine, but that wasn't what exactly got Paul excited. For Paul, it was the resurrection. Because the resurrection is what gave meaning to everything else. All of the words, all of the actions had to be grounded in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And he would preach and he would proclaim how we are united to Christ. We are united in Christ's death by our baptism, and we are raised with Christ to new life. But Paul made it clear that the resurrection of Jesus isn't just some future hope to celebrate once a year, but there are practical implications for tomorrow and beyond. He wrote about that in his letter to Romans. I want to read that verse again to you. It reminds us of what Paul says this means to us. There in that 6th chapter, verse 4. Here again what Paul wrote. Therefore, we have been buried with him by baptism in the dead, so that just as Christ was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, so we too might walk in newness of life. Because Christ is raised, Paul said, we too are to walk in newness of life. What does that mean? I mean, we understand newness, right? It means something different, something fresh. It means something should be changed, not like it was before. That somehow the resurrection of Jesus should change things. And that change should be reflected in our lives. That we should go about our lives somehow reflecting the resurrection of Jesus. Something distinctive about how we live. Living as a resurrection people. If we call ourselves Christian, we are called to be a resurrection people who live life in a different way. You know, if we want to understand what it means to be a resurrection people, we go back to the beginning. To those the first resurrection people who proclaimed the empty tomb. You know, we go back in time, we think about Christianity. The reality is, common sense would tell you Christianity never should have survived. There shouldn't be Christians today. When you think about everything that was against them, everything that was against the Christian faith. I mean, first of all, there were many who were exiled by their families. Exiled by their families because they followed this guy named Jesus Christ. They were put out. They were marginalized. They were ridiculed. Think about the story they tried to tell people. First of all, they followed this guy who was crucified. All right, not exactly uplifting. And then they proclaimed that on the third day he rose from the dead. Not everyone was so agreeing to that story. Those first Christians, they faced persecution by the authorities that were over them. They faced death, and many were put to death for their belief in their profession of Jesus Christ. There were many obstacles. There was the heresies that tried to make their way into the church. Oftentimes they would meet in secret. There were so many challenges that the reality is, you look back and say, how could it ever survive? But it did. Despite all of those threats, despite all of those obstacles, people kept coming to Christ. Why? Why? What was so compelling? Was it just the story? No, what made it so compelling was the story was reflected in the Christians' lives. They would look at those people who called themselves Christian. They would see that the way that they loved, the way that they shared, the way they cared for each other, how they went about their lives with this joy, this hope, despite the persecution, despite the suffering, the difficulties of life. They would see how they lived and went, I want that. I don't know what it is that you've got, but I want to live like that. Tell me more. How can I live that way? The crowds were at it. Because they walked in newness of life, because there was something different about how they carried themselves and treated each other. And for the first 200 or 300 years of the church, that's how it grew. Christianity grew. More and more people came to Christ. More and more people came to embrace the great good news of the resurrection. They came because of the way that the people lived. But then things changed. Things changed. Actually, you think it got better, because there in the 300s, suddenly Christians were no longer persecuted. And by 383, the Emperor of Rome decreed that all citizens of Rome should become Christian. That's good news, right? Now, Christianity has a favored status in the Roman Empire. And suddenly, thousands and thousands of people became Christian. Because it's what you were expected to do as a citizen of Rome. That's who you were supposed to do. No longer were people becoming Christian primarily because of a want of a type of life. They became Christian because it's just what they were expected to do. And for hundreds of years, it continued that way. Don't get me wrong, there were people who continued to embody the resurrection, reflected the way they lived their life. But by and large, it just became part of who you were. From generation to generation, being a Christian was just something that you were. And there really weren't expectations placed upon you. Well, other than you go to church. That was a pretty big expectation. You got to be in church for it. But other than that, they just went about their lives. Nothing really any different than anyone else. And through that time, they developed a sense of entitlement. Things were just made easy. Fast forward to today. Today, all I hear about is how it's not easy. We hear the stories, the reports. You know, thank goodness we have the internet now. We get all this information thrown at us here. Hear how fewer and fewer people identify themselves as Christian. And in fact, many people are looking at Christians and saying, I don't want that. That Christians have become known more today by what we are against than what we're for. And of course, rising up out of the church and out of Christianity, I know that I've got colleagues, pastors, I've been guilty of myself. We want to cry woe, right? We'll say, well, it's so hard today, right? You know, there's so many other things that are going on. We've been kicked out of schools and the governments. We don't get to do all that stuff anymore. And no longer are Sundays protected. Now there's so much other stuff going on and all these other faiths around. And it's just hard today, right? It's tough. And we're our own worst enemies because we're so busy. It's just difficult to be a Christian today, right? What do you think first Christians would say to all that? Do you think any of that mattered to them? Or do you think rather for them it didn't make a difference who was emperor or president? It didn't make a difference to them what was going on around in society, whether they were persecuted or favored. All that mattered to them was walking in the newness of life. All that mattered to them was living as Christ had called them to. All that mattered to them was living a life worthy and reflecting the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And that's what should matter to us. If we are a resurrection people, if you call yourself a Christian, we are, then we too should walk in the newness of life. We too should somehow reflect the resurrection of Jesus. That somehow Easter is more than just this day. This day is the day we gather and we celebrate, rightfully so, because of the good news. We lift up the special songs and we praise God with singing and with dancing and all the special activities and the pastor's best efforts of the sermon. We lift all this up, but this is just a celebration. Tomorrow is living. The empty tomb is not an empty message. When we reflect the resurrection of life. The thing we have to do is ask ourselves tomorrow morning and the next day is, am I doing anything in my life that reflects the resurrection of Jesus? When I go about my work, my job, is there anything about the way I approach my work that is worthy and reflects the resurrection? We think about our relationships as husband and wife, as father and mother and daughter and son, as friends. Is there anything about the way I approach my relationships that reflects and is worthy of the resurrection? When we think about how we engage those beyond our walls, we think about those we engage in our community. We think about the stuff that we write on Facebook and Twitter and all the other stuff that we put out there. Do our words, do our actions somehow reflect the resurrection? Are they worthy of the resurrection? We ask that question, is there anything I'm doing right now that would cause someone else to look at me and say, I want to live like that? Is there anything about who we are and what we do each and every day that would cause someone to say, I want that in my life? We are a resurrection people. Because Christ has been raised, we walk in newness of life. We live and speak and act as something that is different, not like it was before. Reflecting the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Just as we look back at those first Christians, we should say, I want to live like that. We need to live like that. Let's pray.